A while back, I made a video on the Shadow of the Colossus 2018 remake for the PS4, and I absolutely loved it. Shadow of the Colossus was created by a studio called Team Ico and was originally released in 2005 for the PS2. It's the second of 3 games the studio has created, the first being Ico, and the third and most recent being The Last Guardian. You probably already know how much of a massive success Shadow was, but what about their other 2 games? I was really interested in diving into them after playing Shadow, so I picked up the Ico and Shadow of the Colossus collection for PS3 and The Last Guardian for PS4, and binge and platinumed all 3 of them in a row. And oh my god, what a journey it was. First up on the docket is Ico, originally released in 2001 for the PS2, came over to the West in 2002, and re-released in HD for the PS3 as part of the Ico and Shadow of the Colossus collection in 2011, which is the version I played. Now, this game has a reputation. I'm relatively new to the gaming scene, to be honest, having really only gotten into it in late 2018, so I hardly had much video game experience outside of the ones I played as a little kid. Subspace Emissary is still the best thing ever created, I will die on this hill. As a result, a lot of the classics and general historical culture of gaming is lost on me. Since I got into it, I've heard a lot of things about a lot of things and have been extremely immersed in the gaming scene since then, but I didn't actually live through a lot of it because I just wasn't interested in video games for most of my life. And I have to get all this out there because Ico is a very special game. From the gamer's perspective, the game is kind of nothing. It's empty, it's quiet, and there's not much going on. But I don't say this as a bad thing. I say this because it makes the game unique, and even someone like me who's used to, well, gamey games and didn't have much background context of the game, could recognize just what Ico was going for. I knew it was acclaimed, I knew what Team Ico's general style was from having played Shadow of the Colossus, but I didn't know what the vision for Ico was going in. And while it is certainly the kind of game that wouldn't be for everyone, I could understand how intentional every aspect of this game is, and I loved it. It tells a story purely through gameplay, with practically zero dialogue, exposition, or anything you'd ever expect from your average video game, and it's beautiful. So what exactly is Ico? The setup is that the protagonist, a child named Ico, is being locked up and sacrificed in this castle for being born with horns, which is seen as a mark of being cursed. By sheer luck, Ico busts out of his cage, and you're off to the races. There's no tutorial, no UI on screen, or anything you can access that gives you any hints, controls, or tells you what you can and can't do. You just gotta move and figure it the hell out. For the first few minutes, you're kinda just wandering around and trying to get to any new areas you can while exploring this castle and getting your bearings. Eventually, you come across a girl in a cage, and what else is there to do but free her? Ico jailbreaks her, fends off some monsters that appear to try to take her, and the game really begins. Ico is one giant escort mission. Your main goal is to escape the castle and take the girl, named Yorda, with you. The only enemies you fight are the shadows that will appear at fixed points throughout the game to try to take away Yorda. If they manage to catch her and drag her into their weird shadow sludge vortexes, then it's game over. The only other lose condition is just falling to your death. Ico doesn't have health, you simply lose if you fall off a bottomless pit or just fall too far. The only combat is whacking the shadows to defeat them when they appear, which is still oddly satisfying. I think because the controller vibrates a little with each hit, and you can do a little 3-hit combo to knock shadows on their ass, which is just kinda fun. And actually doing combat is just a juxtaposition to the rest of the game, which has you platforming and puzzle solving. Just a little change of pace. The crux of this game is just finding ways to progress. There's practically no UI, which was a deliberate design choice to make the game more immersive and less gamey, as you'll see is a trend among Team Ico games. This is simply a puzzle game where you need to figure out not only where to go and how to get there, but also how to take Yorda there. Yorda is completely controlled by AI. Ico can grab her hand to directly lead her to places, but she can't do a lot of the things Ico can. She can only jump so high, but she will climb up ledges if they're low enough. She can jump across gaps and climb ladders, but that's about it. She can't grab anything like boxes and move them, she can't climb up chains. You need to find ways to guide her to where she needs to go. Move a box in front of a ledge for her to climb on, or give her a new platform to jump to. Besides just directly grabbing Yorda's hand, you can also call out to her, and if she feels like it, she'll follow you, or at least go to the closest place to you that she can. I will say the AI is surprisingly smart and manageable, especially for a game from 2001, but of course it's not without its faults. Ico is a lonely game. Everything is quiet, and the only signs of life, except the weird shadow things I don't even think qualify as life, are Ico and Yorda themselves. Oh, and I guess this bitch too. It is just you and this huge empty castle to navigate. Hell, Ico and Yorda can't even verbally communicate due to a language barrier, and despite this, the relationship they build is very real, and naturally, the player gets just as attached as you try to lead her to safety throughout the whole game, and by the end, you can tell just how much they care for each other. This game lets the environment and the player's own feelings do a lot of the talking, and that's really what Ico is about, the relationship between Ico and Yorda. Fumito Ueda, the writer of Ico, had a vision that he still keeps in his games today. All the way back before 2001, where video games were still pretty stigmatized and absolutely not seen by most people as art, Fumito Ueda said, "Fuck that. Video games are art. They are a wholly unique storytelling medium, and Ueda set out to prove just what you could do with that medium." And ironically, in so doing, his entire goal was to make it not feel like a game. Menus, UI, stats, and information cluttering up the screen are at a bare minimum. In fact, they're practically non-existent aside from the pause menu and the save screen. The one single focus of this game is Ico and Yorda and how they solve puzzles. And the puzzles aren't gamey either, they arise very naturally from just how the castle is laid out. There's nothing really directing you where to go, you just need to interact with the environment and rely on intuition. And I love this environment. The castle itself, while on your first playthrough might seem a bit complicated and intimidating at times, is actually pretty small when you actually get to know where everything is, and you'll find yourself revisiting parts of it multiple times. It's an extremely cohesive map, and it's just fascinating exploring and getting to know this place. Especially on repeat playthroughs where there's more detail and subtle things to pick up on. Like, oh, you can actually see that place I'll end up in later from here. My favorite realization of this comes from... well, I have no idea how to describe any of the locations of this game, but there's an area you end up in at the very last section of the game that appears to be totally disconnected from the castle, but you can actually see it right here below this area that comes way before. Like, come on, that's so cool. Everything is connected, and once you get to know the layout a bit, it's possible to go from anywhere to anywhere at almost any time. A kind of freedom that I really appreciate, and honestly goes a long way in making you, and Ico himself, feel more autonomous. This entire castle is your oyster, and the scenery is just beautiful. I know it looks a lot better on the PS3 since it can actually render more detail than the original PS2 release could, but the crazy thing is that even on the PS2, Team Ico put all this detail here. They changed practically nothing for the HD re-release, simply saying, "We're glad players can actually see more of the detail we put into Ico." The whole thing is extremely immersive, something I kind of hate saying because at this point I just associate that term with AAA gamers seeing one blade of grass act weird and complaining that it breaks their immersion. But it really was a core part of Ueda's vision. He wanted an immersive experience, free of those stereotypical video game aspects, and he damn well succeeded, because Ico is something you couldn't find anything else like from the time, or really even in general. The love and passion that was put into Ico is unquestionable. It focuses on only what it needs to, and it's no wonder why it has the highly acclaimed reputation it does. This is something totally unique and special. It's a world you can just get lost in, and characters you can connect to solely through their actions with a minimal amount of dialogue actually spoken. Team Ico cooked here, undoubtedly. And since I can't think of a good segue to save my life, let's talk about some trophies, because with the PS3 comes trophies. And while the ones for Ico generally aren't that bad, someone tell me why oh why they thought adding a speedrun trophy in a Team Ico game was a good idea. They're not exactly known for their speed. And this is no small ask. 2 hours to beat the entire game. That is a strict ass time limit. And do you know how uniquely agonizing it is to know you're on the clock and your entire gameplay is just, oh my god, go! Your best bet here is to just try to follow along step by step with someone else's speedrun of the game and just hope and pray you don't lag too far behind, because that is very easy to do. Also, you can get a lightsaber. Ico was a pretty tiring game for Ico to make, so they decided to go for something a little more action-oriented the second time around. In fact, Shadow of the Colossus, which was actually going to be called Nico, was originally meant to be an online game, where you and other players would take down the Colossi together. The concept footage is kinda nuts, but eventually they decided not to do that, and we got the Shadow of the Colossus we all know and love today. Now, given that I've already covered this game, I'm not going to stay on it too much. I played this again mostly because I was interested in how it differed from the remake, and I already had it since it came with Ico, so why the hell not? The remake is extremely faithful to the original. with the only real differences being the updated graphics and slight tweaks to the physics to make Wander a little more stable. Yes, you heard me correctly, Wander is even more unstable in the original. He stumbles far easier, which makes climbing around the Colossi a bit more annoying, but it's a very similar experience. However, with the far more limited capabilities that PS2 had, the graphics of the original Shadow of the Colossus are just different. And I don't just mean in polygon count, because obviously, I mean they couldn't render everything that the PS4 is able to render, so visibility is much more limited, which gives the Forbidden Lands and even the Colossi themselves a more ethereal feeling, and I honestly really love it. It is its own unique atmosphere, and it's really difficult to say which one I actually like more. Now, you know me, I just had to platinum it again, and the trophies are where the biggest differences really lie between the remake and the original. The original Shadow of the Colossus has trophies for collecting every single fruit in the land, and one for killing every single lizard in the land. Some of which respawn, by the way, making you kill them multiple times before they're gone for good for some reason. I'll just say that if you're trying to do this, please make sure you'll have enough stamina to climb the main shrine, because there are 48 fruits up there that also count towards the trophy. But my main gripe with this are the goddamn time attacks. You thought Ico was gonna be it? Nah, Shadow of the Colossus has a built-in time attack mode, which of course is in the remake too, and there are even trophies for clearing all of them in both versions. But here's the thing about the original Shadow of the Colossus. From what I've read, I think this is caused by the PAL versus NTSC conversion fucking with the speed at which games run, so the time attacks are harder in the NTSC version than PAL, and they just didn't adjust the time limit. But regardless, the hard mode time attacks in this game are fucked. And really, it's only a few. Okay, it's only 2, even if Phaedra is still a bitch.
Huh?
Gaius and Argus, Colossi 3 and 15, are insane. You have 5 minutes to kill Gaius, which the remake gives you an entire minute and a half extra to do, by the way. And the physics of this game will make landing any kind of strike seem nearly impossible. Seriously, you really notice the difference in physics when you're being timed. This game does not fuck around. Your run can easily be 3 whole minutes of just trying to stab this dude's brain before opting to just jump out your second story window instead. And Argus gives you an entire 11 and a half minutes, and it's still hardly enough. It wouldn't be bad at all, actually, if it weren't for that one chest sigil where every star in the goddamn sky needs to align perfectly for the gods above to let you get one stab in. The optimal strategy for this is literally to just settle for any kind of stab, no matter how little it is charged, because hell will freeze over before you get a fully charged stab on this thing. And this really is the only problem, because I was trying this for a good 1 or 2 hours, and the one run where I finally did get it, I had 6 minutes left on the clock. You just need to wipe out that chest sigil as fast as you can, and hope you get lucky with it. This thing sucks. And it's such a shame, because Argus is my favorite Colossus in the whole game, and now I'm just gonna associate him with this bitch-ass time attack. Still the best Colossus though. But that's enough of that. Shadow of the Colossus is as fantastic as ever, and we have one last game in Team Ico's lineup here to talk about. The Last Guardian. The Last Guardian is such an interesting game, because how the hell do you follow up a game like Shadow of the Colossus with the ridiculous amount of critical and commercial success it received? By doing what Team Ico does best. And the people fucking hated them for it. The Last Guardian is a Team Ico game through and through in the best possible sense. It has everything you would expect, those weird ass physics, the extremely atmospheric environment, the trimmed down UI, and of course, the huge focal point this time around, the relationship between the boy and whatever the fuck this thing is. Meet Trico, this dumb idiot. Oh my god, I love him. The Last Guardian, the big successor to Shadow of the Colossus, is a game that most closely resembles Ico. It's progressing and puzzle solving in a lonely environment with your only partner. But in 2016, when this game released, people didn't want that. People didn't want a non-gamey game, people wanted Shadow of the Colossus, and this game got kinda trashed for it. What, this extremely popular studio who made the smash hit Shadow of the Colossus put out a new game and it looks like this? Why yes it does, thank you very fucking much. The Last Guardian is all about the boy and the creature called Trico. Now, this game got shit on a lot when it first came out, but I think public perception of it has softened a lot since then. And the hate mainly came from people who A, were excited for this game because of Shadow of the Colossus, but just didn't know Team Ico well enough to know that this is what the studio is all about, and or B, just didn't care to get to know Trico, because this goddamn creature is just about the closest thing to a video game simulating a completely autonomous being that I have ever seen. I'm so serious, Trico really feels like he is a real living creature. He can seem extremely unpredictable at first, but get to know him and really form a bond with him, and he can be pretty damn reliable. Trico is not just a video game NPC or AI companion or whatever. Fumito Ueda, again, made Trico as much of a non-gamey thing as possible. That is to say, no predictable animations playing on loop, no real mechanics, quote-unquote, that are conveyed to you. He is just a thing that exists that the boy needs to try and control to the best of his ability. At any given moment, Trico could be doing anything you'd expect an animal to do. Sit down and scratch himself, shake himself off, roar at you, and his little mannerisms will often give you a hint as to what he's thinking or what he's about to do. You can physically see him tense up before priming himself to jump somewhere. He'll look back at you if he's expecting orders. If you give him an order when he's already registered a previous one, he'll get confused. You can see how eager he is when he sees food, just waiting for his chance to eat that shit up. He really just acts like a real animal, and you need to treat him as such if you want to have a smoother and better experience, or else Trico will just be all over the place. And I think it is absolutely insane that they were able to create Trico the way they did. Like, this is genuinely so goddamn impressive. Of course, in Team Ico fashion, this game absolutely nails the environment, because of course it does. Like its predecessors, this game features some spectacular scenery, and the overall map is actually a lot more contained than it looks. You'll often see some spots you've already visited or will visit later in the distance, and you'll end up revisiting some places too. Lake Ico is actually really coherent, but due to the nature of the game, you can't really go backwards too much, only forwards. It's not as free to explore as Ico is, but that's perfectly fine. I think this might be my favorite area among all the games, to be honest. The aesthetic of just being so open and outside most of the time, along with the crazy platforming this game has you doing, is just something else. There's also this narration playing throughout the game of the boy from the future recounting this experience, which is a nice touch and really adds to the storytelling kind of atmosphere. They also double as natural hints that will play if the game thinks you're stuck somewhere. Weird thing about this game, it takes the whole stripped down UI concept to even greater extremes than with Ico. The main difference being that there's not even a save screen in The Last Guardian. This is because, and get ready for this one, you can't save. Like, you just can't. The game will autosave at fixed points, which are very frequent, and that's about it. And the game doesn't even tell you when it autosaves. If you die or restart, you have no idea where you're going to end up, and most of the time it's going to be like a minute back, but if you want to specifically go to a point before the last autosave, fuck you, you need to restart the entire game. And trust me, we'll circle back to this later. I'm like 90% sure this was done to make the game feel even more immersive and less gamey, but this is one thing I just do not agree with in the slightest because it's just a direct hit to a basic quality of life feature. And this game is significantly longer than Ico and even Shadow of the Colossus, but overall the game is fantastic. It will make you fall in love with this dumbass creature and it will make you bawl your eyes out. Team Ico has done it again. Just, for the love of God, don't try to platinum it, because what were they thinking? First off, let me just say that the concept of trophies in a Team Ico game in the first place is really ironic given that they are a token gamified concept in games where Ueda wants to strip those things away, which isn't a slight against them. I know trophies are more of a PlayStation thing as opposed to things in the actual game, just thought it was kind of funny, and also I fucking hate these trophies, so any excuse for them to not be there is a good one. But alas, they are there, so with that being said, what does The Last Guardian have you doing? You know how trophies usually teach you about a game? Make you do and learn some things that you would never do or know otherwise? I mean, that's one of the reasons I like getting trophies, to know more about the game, and really try to get the complete experience. Ico's trophies had you getting a secret ending, getting some secret items, getting good at the game by speedrunning it. Even getting all the lizards and fruit in Shadow of the Colossus at least felt productive. The Last Guardian though, fuck you. Listen to all the narrator hints, now. All 95 ambient lines of dialogue the narrator can say. Yeah, you heard me right, 95. Okay, only 63 of them are actually required, and you can find a list of what those are, but I'm a paranoid bitch, so I try to hit all of them anyway. You know how I said these double up as hints? Yeah, that means you need to intentionally trigger every single hint, which means bumblefucking around in almost every single area just waiting for these things to trigger. And a lot of them have some pretty specific requirements, like these ones near the beginning of the game, where you need to have a barrel somewhere Trico can see it, but not actually give it to him, and just stand there until 3 different lines of dialogue trigger, all telling you to just give him the goddamn barrel. Or this hilarious one where, due to what I can only assume is a bug, won't trigger until a certain amount of time has passed and you change your costume. I'm not kidding, everyone has problems with this one, and if you are too, I'm gonna save you a massive headache and tell you to change your costume. It will immediately trigger if enough time has also passed. And God forbid you miss one and the game autosaves on your ass, because guess what? Time to start an entirely new run! Just make sure to still finish this one first so you don't lose progress on all of the other hints, because you don't need to get all of these in one playthrough, the only saving grace of this. And if you're wondering whether the game tracks any of it for you, no, it doesn't. I literally copied and pasted every single line and the requirements into a Google Doc and manually kept track of them. But that's not the only thing I kept track of, because there's also a trophy for giving Trico every single barrel in the game. All 48 of them. Again, not in one run, but in total. So not only do you have to look out for the narrator lines, you also need to look out for barrels. And you also need to look out for spears, because enemies will throw spears into Trico that you can pull out, and of course there's a trophy for pulling out every single spear he gets hit with in a timely fashion. And you know what? Let's throw one more thing into the mix, because why not? Let's go with holes. Look out for those holes Trico can stick his head into. There's a trophy for sticking his head into all of them. And there is no way to reload any save but an autosave to go back for anything. If you miss something towards the very end of the game, good luck playing the entire game again. Whoever designed these trophies, I just want to talk. Oh, and let's not forget the obligatory speedrun trophy for completing the game in under 5 hours. Which is fairly generous when you know what you're doing, especially because these little unskippable in-game cutscenes that play pretty frequently don't count towards your time. But I still highly recommend following along with someone's guide. Sable Dragonrook has an amazing one I was following along with, and I'm still pretty sure I cut it really close. Legitimately one of the most stressful things I've done in a game, just because I was so goddamn tired after doing everything else, and if I had to restart the game one more time, I was gonna have to be admitted into an asylum. Again, knowing you're on the clock while desperately trying to get Trico to do something he is just not cooperating with is pure agony. And other than that, there are just so many miscellaneous trophies that have you doing the most useless shit, like throwing a barrel at an enemy 20 times for some reason. And that one sucks because there are only like 2 spots you can even do this in where an enemy and a barrel are both present in the same place. And make sure to keep restarting before Ico kills the last enemy, because in most fights the game autosaves right after all the enemies are defeated. You can't make this shit up. Moral of the story, platinuming this game is a test of your sanity, and I do not recommend. But the game itself is phenomenal, and I do very highly recommend. Seriously though, Team Ico has made nothing but bangers. They totally have this unique style nailed down, and I cannot wait for whatever they're doing next, because they are currently working on a new project. I am simultaneously terrified and excited for whatever it turns out to be, but you know damn well that when it does come, I will be playing it and I will be talking about it. For now, these 3 games are well worth your time, and I just wanted to gush about them a little. I've been Mags, and I'll see you in my next endeavor. Peace.